On August 20th, 1966, a boy flying a kite on the slopes of Morro do Vintém, a hill in Niterói, Brazil, made a discovery. In a small clearing, he found the bodies of two men. They were lying side by side on a bed of leaves. They were dressed in formal suits and wore waterproof coats. Over their eyes were crude masks, cut from sheets of lead. There were no signs of violence, no evidence of a struggle. Found near them was a small notebook. Inside, a page contained a set of instructions. 1630 be at specified place. 1830 ingest capsules after the effect protect metals wait for signal mask. The men were dead, but the cause of their death and the meaning of their final actions remains unknown. The deceased were identified as Manuel Pereira de Cruz, aged 32, and Miguel José Viana, aged 34. Both were married electronics technicians from the town of Campos dos Goitacazes, several hours northeast of Niterói. They co-owned a small but respected television and radio repair shop. Their expertise in electronics was well known in their community. Their interests, however, extended beyond conventional science. Friends and family would later report that both men were deeply involved in a local community of what was termed scientific spiritualists. This was not a formal organization, but a loose network of individuals who sought to bridge the gap between technology and the esoteric. They believed that spiritual phenomena, including contact with spirits or beings from other worlds, could be investigated and perhaps even initiated through scientific means. This was not the men's first such experiment. In the months leading up to their deaths, their activities had become increasingly dangerous. On May 12, 1966, Manoel and Miguel, along with a friend named Elcio Correa Gomez, were present for an event on Atafona Beach. An enormous explosion occurred, producing a fireball that was seen for miles and a tremor that was felt in nearby towns. The local press speculated that a flying saucer had crashed into the ocean. Investigators found track marks on the sand and noted a strong smell of sulfur. Just 1 month later, in June, another homemade device exploded in the garden of Manuel's home, leaving behind remnants of metal pipes and wires. These incidents established a clear pattern of high-risk, clandestine experimentation. The cultural landscape of Brazil in the mid-1960s provided a fertile ground for such beliefs. The country was under a military dictatorship, an environment that often fosters suspicion and an interest in alternative realities. At the same time, Kardecist Spiritism, a belief system that combines Christian ethics with a belief in reincarnation and communication with the dead, had a significant following. The global phenomenon of UFO sightings was also a topic of intense public interest. For technicians like Manoel and Miguel, the rational, predictable world of circuits and radio waves was not separate from the world of the paranormal. They saw technology as a potential tool to access it. Their final journey began on the evening of August 16th. Manoel informed his wife that he and Miguel would be traveling to São Paulo the next morning. The stated purpose was to purchase electronic components for their shop and to buy a used car. He gathered a large sum of money for this purpose. Reports estimate the amount was between 2 and 3 million Brazilian cruzeiros, a considerable sum at the time, sufficient to purchase a vehicle. He also packed 2 towels. The destination they gave to their families was a fabrication. Their true purpose was something else entirely. On the morning of Wednesday, August 17, 1966, a friend drove Manoel and Miguel to the bus station in Campos dos Goitacazes. They purchased tickets, but not for São Paulo. Their destination was Niterói, a city across the bay from Rio de Janeiro. They boarded the bus from the Autoviação Santo Antonio company and began the journey south. They arrived in Niterói at approximately 2:30 that afternoon. The weather was overcast, with intermittent rain. From this point, their movements have been reconstructed through a small collection of receipts and a few crucial witness statements. Their first confirmed stop was at an electronics supply store named Fluscop. There, they spoke with the owner, Hernani Teixeira de Carvalho Filho. He would later tell police that the men asked for specific Philips components that were not typically available in Niterói. He found the request strange, given their technical expertise. At this point, their demeanor was described as calm. From Fluscop, they walked a short distance to a plastics and rubber store, Casa Brasilia. A receipt shows they purchased 2 waterproof raincoats. According to the store clerk who served them, their mood had shifted. They now appeared agitated and were in a noticeable hurry. Despite the rain, they left the store carrying the coats rather than wearing them. Police investigators would later speculate that they may have encountered someone or something in the short interval between leaving the electronics store and arriving at the coat store. At approximately 3:15 in the afternoon, the 2 men entered a small establishment called Bar A Merceria São Jorge. The bar was situated near the base of Morro do Vintém. They bought a single bottle of mineral water. The waitress who served them, Maria de Lourdes Sarelvas, provided one of the most significant testimonies in the case. She described Miguel Viana as being very nervous and said he checked his wristwatch constantly, as if counting down to a critical appointment. Before leaving, the men asked for and waited for a receipt for the water bottle. The purpose of the receipt was to allow them to return the empty bottle later to reclaim a small deposit. This was the last time Manuel Pereira de Cruz and Miguel José Viana were verifiably seen alive. All evidence suggests they walked directly from the bar towards Andrade Pinto Street, which ends at the foot of Vintém Hill. From there, they would have taken one of the tracks leading up the steep and overgrown hillside. Sometime later that evening, around 7 o'clock, a woman named Gracinda Barbosa Coutinho and her 3 children were driving on a street that circled the hill. They stopped their car to observe a strange object in the sky directly above Morro do Vintém. She described it as a luminous, oval-shaped object, orange in color, that was surrounded by a ring of fire. It emitted beams of blue light in multiple directions. According to her testimony, the object hovered and moved up and down for approximately 4 minutes before it vanished. At the time, she did not think to report the sighting to the authorities. What transpired on the hilltop can only be inferred from the sparse evidence left behind. The notebook found with their bodies contained precise instructions. The first entry was for 4:30 in the afternoon. Be at specified place. The second was for 6:30 in the evening. Ingest capsules. Following this, they were to protect metals, await signal, and use a mask. The timeline they followed suggests a deliberate ritualized procedure executed in isolation on the remote summit of the hill. On the afternoon of August 20th, a local boy named Jorge da Costa Alves was attempting to retrieve a kite that had become stuck in a tree on Morro do Vintém when he found the 2 bodies. He alerted the authorities. However, due to the approaching dusk, the difficult terrain, and the poor weather, a police team was not dispatched until the following morning. On August 21st, more than 3 full days after the men are believed to have died, a party of police officers and firefighters reached the scene. They found the men lying on their backs on a carefully prepared bed of pindoba palm leaves. This type of leaf would have required a knife or machete to cut, yet no such tool was found at the scene. There were no signs of a struggle. Miguel's wedding ring was found tied to a pair of reading glasses in his jacket pocket, and his wristwatch was stored in his pants. The money they carried, 157,000 cruzeiros, was found in a plastic bag inside Miguel's clothing, with another 4,000 inside Manuel's jacket. While a substantial amount, it was significantly less than the sum they had reportedly taken from home. Also present were the nearly empty water bottle, the 2 towels, and the crudely fashioned lead masks lying beside the bodies. The masks were shaped like sunglasses but had no eye holes. They were simple sheets of lead, designed only to cover the eyes. The subsequent investigation was compromised by a critical failure in forensic procedure. The bodies were transported to the local coroner's office, which was reportedly inundated with cases that day, including that of a murdered detective. The autopsies of Manoel and Miguel were not prioritized. A formal examination was not conducted for several weeks. By that time, the humid climate had caused their internal organs to decompose to such an extent that reliable toxicological tests were impossible. A reporter who visited the office discovered the organs had been left on a shelf and were eventually discarded without analysis. As a result, the official cause of death for both men was recorded as undetermined, and a crucial avenue of investigation was permanently closed. In the absence of concrete medical evidence, investigators and researchers have proposed several theories. One theory posits that the men were victims of their own esoteric experiment. Influenced by their scientific spiritualist group, they were attempting to establish contact with an otherworldly intelligence. This theory suggests the capsules mentioned in their note contained a powerful psychedelic or other mind-altering substance intended to facilitate a trance state for communication. An accidental, simultaneous overdose of this unknown substance is offered as the cause of death. The lead masks would have been to protect their eyes from a blinding light they anticipated would accompany the contact. The instruction to protect metals would explain why their metallic watches were removed and stored away. This aligns with the materials found in their homes, which included books on spiritualism and additional lead mask-making supplies. A second prominent theory centers on foul play, with the scene deliberately staged to appear paranormal. This hypothesis suggests the involvement of a third party who knew the men were carrying a large amount of money. The men could have been lured to the remote hilltop under the pretense of participating in a secret ritual. In this scenario, the capsules were not hallucinogens, but a fast-acting and potent poison. The perpetrator, or perpetrators, could have administered the poison, waited for the men to die, and then arranged the scene before taking the majority of the money and disappearing. The lack of struggle is consistent with a poison that causes rapid paralysis or cardiac arrest. This would explain the missing funds and the seemingly inexplicable circumstances. A third, more esoteric explanation takes the men's beliefs and preparations at face value. This theory suggests that Manoel and Miguel succeeded in their experiment. The signal they were waiting for was the object witnessed by Gracinda Coutinho and her children, an unidentified flying object. The deaths, according to this view, were a direct consequence of this contact. Perhaps they were exposed to a form of radiation or an energy field for which their crude lead masks and waterproof coats offered no meaningful protection. This theory is unfalsifiable, yet it is the only one that fully incorporates all the bizarre elements of the case: the men's documented beliefs, their meticulous preparations, the cryptic note, and the independent UFO sighting over the exact location at the estimated time of their deaths. More than 50 years have passed since the bodies of Manuel Pereira da Cruz and Miguel José Viana were found. The fundamental questions of the case remain unanswered. The critical failure to perform a timely toxicological analysis means the possibility of poison, whether self-administered or given by another, can never be confirmed or dismissed. The objects found at the scene, the peculiar lead masks, the waterproof coats, the ambiguous note, are artifacts from a narrative whose conclusion is missing. Were these two electronics technicians the victims of a common criminal who cleverly disguised his actions? Were they casualties of their own dangerous and misguided quest for spiritual enlightenment? Or did they, on that rainy evening on Vintém Hill, encounter something for which they were fatally unprepared? The silence from that hillside in 1966 offers no answers.